It's great to be here with everybody. And I think this will be a really great webinar to give some practical examples of how to really take the power of large language models and apply it to your business in a way that can really start giving you some steps towards improving your operation. So I'm excited about today's conversation. So just a quick agenda and introductions. My name is John. I'm the head of sales here at HumanFirst. I'm joined by Lauren, our marketing lead, who, is secretly a HumanFirst expert. She might not want to admit it herself, but you should see some of the really cool things she does with our product. As far as an agenda goes, we're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of setting the stage, explaining like why we're talking about prompts today and what we're trying to solve for in an organization and their customer service. We'll dive right into the prompt workshop. This is where we're going to get hands-on and we're going to talk through the different prompts that we have, how to apply them, and give you some examples. And then we'll leave you with some tips and a take-home guide, and we want to leave some time for Q&A as well. Okay, so really want to set the stage here with, I think, the problem that most organizations are really facing is that almost every company has this challenge, and it's as the size of the business grows, the quality of the customer service and the customer experience often goes down, and the cost to serve those customers goes up. And it's the reason why so many companies have turned to really useful products like a knowledge base or a chatbot, IVR, voice bots, NPS surveys, voice of customer surveys, all these types of things, or even just building more self-service options within their product or experience. And there's even this like school of thought that would say that the perfect customer experience would result in zero contacts at all. I don't know, it's controversial, but I think at the end of the day, all of this tech is like, the question is like, is it really solving the problem? And I would argue that the answer is no. So like, what is the solution? Like, how do you actually solve the problem? So all these products I mentioned, knowledge-based, chatbot, surveys, et cetera, they all reduce the cost to serve your customer and arguably increase the customer experience. Although, just on a personal note, I'd say that I've never read an FAQ article that I'd describe as like a great experience. I'm always a little marginally frustrated by FAQ articles, and my guess is you all feel the same way. And I think that the main issue is that there's this big long tail of value to both customers and organizations that remains uncaptured, right? Like all of those things that I talked about are kind of squeezing the top down a little bit, but there's still this really long tail. It's hard to fix. There's still this friction in the customer experience, and there's still a lot of cost around serving that. So when you break it down, though, to an individual, just to one person, it's relatively simple to understand what that person needs or wants to have a good experience or to have their issue resolved. And it's usually fairly straightforward to structure your service in a way that delivers that for that person at a fairly low cost. But the problem becomes really hard to solve when you look at 1 million people. When you have 1 million customers, it's a much different problem. And I think the unlock is that LLMs help you solve this exact challenge. By being able to build a prompt, engineer the prompt to a high degree of quality, and then apply it to your data at scale, and in this case, your data is 1 million customers, you get the power to look at each person as an individual among the greater population, and then you can ensure that their voices are considered in your strategy. So prompt times data lets you start chipping away at that long tail of value that remains for an organization to capture as it relates to giving better quality customer service at a lower cost. So if you're learning from your customers, you start to get smarter at scale, and you can really make sure that that experience improves. So this is our point of view. This is what I think we're like at the heart of what we're trying to solve. And now we're going to kind of jump into some more of the practicality of it.
Yeah, beautifully put, John. I want to just double down on the unlock of the LLM, especially as it relates to people like John and myself who are customer-facing people. We work in sales and marketing. We care about our customers' experience, and over many touch points, we want that considered. But we're not coding, Python scripts or Scotch taping technical tools together. So the sort of brilliance of the last 2 years is that all of these things, this instruction flow that John just set up, the idea that we could take those data points, those millions of touch points across those millions of customers, we could build some instructions for what exactly we want to get out of that knowledge or what exactly we want to be able to provide, send that to the LLM and extract our answer, our summary, our insight, our trends. The huge unlock is that all of this is happening in a medium we all understand, and that's language, right? So the data, the actual customer's experience can remain in their natural voice of customer language. The question is simple language, what's this customer frustrated about, or how should I improve my sales calls? And we actually get the summary, the answer, the insight out as natural language. So none of that is new or groundbreaking, but it does kind of feel like magic when it starts to work. And magic takes practice. So this is what we think about all the time at HumanFirst. This is kind of the matrix that we see behind these prompts that we're going to start workshopping. In order for this, workflow to really set in motion with a result that you can trust and apply, you need all these things. You need the relevant data. Sometimes that means combining multiple data sets that cover the whole customer's journey. Sometimes it means honing in on only a specific subset of those data sets. So we only want to know what happened after our recent product launch. We only want to look at the reviews that are talking about, the food at the hotel or something like that. And you also need your proprietary domain expertise, your way of doing things. Otherwise, we're all just writing FAQ articles and blog posts like everyone else's. You need to be able to tell the LLM, this is for the context of my company, for my customer, for my goal, this is the way I need you to pull the insight, or this is what I need you to look for, or this is how I need you to respond. And finally, we need to make sure that that's working across all this, natural nuance of natural language data in a way that we would be proud to stand behind and trust. So all of that goes into a very well-engineered prompt. And I'll just add that there's one more capability here, which is really this data engineering piece. 10,000 reviews. Reviews are helpful. 10,000 reviews, not able to make sense of them, right? Similarly, 10,000 well-summarized reviews, even if the trends are perfectly picked up and the insights are perfectly captured by the LLM, still hard to make sense of. So we need this extra piece of data engineering where we can start to organize the data that we produce in the prompts. We can start to find similarities and trends. We can group it. We can build visualizations. We can start to make sense of it. So all that to say, these kind of 5-point matrix are the things we think about every day and what this demo and these prompts are going to reflect. So we have an incredible team of customer service leaders, professional services, and people like John and I who are just curious. And we're in the tool every day sharing this kind of prompt library and adapting these to our own workflows. We picked six. We picked six of the best workflows we've built for leading CX teams who are working with super high volumes of data, who are trying to run these analytics workflows. And we've tested them against different models and different scenarios, and then we've packaged them for you. I'm going to cover 3 in pretty much in depth. And then I've got a guide to send you all home with to enjoy and play with on your own, with the caveat that, of course, they all need further fine tuning for the model you're using and for the kind of result you're trying to get and for the company that you run. So I'll jump right in. I will caveat that where the CS team at HumanFirst has courage, I have like the marketer's need for perfection. So I've recorded the demo to save you all the typos and the screen switching. But I'll walk you through kind of live. We're going to cover 3 prompts here and super encourage questions as they come up. John's going to monitor the Q&A screen. So if anything is not clear, please do interrupt me. Awesome. Okay. This is an interface we're all familiar with. ChatGPT, the vertical prompting, the single model access. We're going to start with something we probably all have, which is product or service reviews. So if you're running any kind of company, you probably have people giving you direct feedback across something like a Trustpilot or a Google Business Review or a Yelp. And we love that. We love it when customers take time out of the day to tell us what we're doing well and what we're doing poorly. So I've pasted one of the custom built prompts into the ChatGPT interface. And basically here we're telling the LLM the context. In this case, we've used some publicly available scrubbed reviews from a luxury hotel. And we're telling the LLM it could be negative, positive, or neutral. And we'd like you to summarize either the issue or also the highlights. So we want to know what we're really failing at, but also what we're doing well. We're giving it a bunch more instructions. So give it as a single sentence, don't provide opinions and things like that. And we're also actually providing an example. So here's an example of a review. Service on the bar is slow, beautiful bathroom, magnificent views. So we're showing the LLM, if you encounter that kind of review, these are the listed items that they mentioned, and this is how we want the output. I have a placeholder in the guide for you to input your own review. This is one of them. It's actually picking up on similar themes. So they were also not impressed with the service, but they loved the bed and the sofa, bathrooms stunning, and so on. So when I feed this to ChatGPT, I'm looking for that output to be the same. And it's looking pretty good here. So they pick up on the slow service, lack of acknowledgement, but great bed, stunning bathrooms, and superb staff. So that's working pretty well. And that's because we've worked on this prompt a couple times. Let's now go into HumanFirst. A point we'll make is that the productivity gain you imagine with the LLM is kind of ruined by that single interface workflow. So if every time you get a review, you need to copy and paste it into ChatGPT, set the prompt back up again, put your little review in the placeholder, and you just get one output, that's happening no faster than you're able to manually analyze the reviews. So it's really applying these things at scale where the output starts to become interesting. You have options to do that. You could be in the OpenAI playground using API keys and Python scripts and trying to run prompts at scale. You could be in Google Sheets with a ChatGPT plugin. So it's either kind of technical or kind of tedious and slow and gets broken, and neither of them allow for that data engineering piece on the end. So we're going to start to show you how to be running these prompts at scale and going through the full transformations. This is the HumanFirst UI. I've loaded 2,500 reviews for this same hotel retailer. They're all in my data sphere here. And I've got the exact same prompt loaded in the left side panel. And just instead of the placeholder, I'm going to add one of our HumanFirst parameters, text parameter. All this is doing is telling the LLM to take whatever I feed into it as a text and run it in the prompt in parallel. So I'm picking 3 reviews here, and I'm just starting small, running that prompt against my 3. And I should see that list of output for every single one of them. So this one, superb facilities, good location, room didn't really have a proper view. Now we can check back exactly against that source, which in our case is the review, and see if it's right. So we thought the room would have a river view, wouldn't exactly classify as a river view, but the staff were great, excellent facilities. So that one's pretty bang on. Similarly, we can check, okay, they were disappointed with the tea service, but excellent restaurant food. Ordered tea in the morning and was disappointed. Okay, food was lovely, certainly stay again. So it's seeming to pick up on the right things, and I would say this is more or less validated. If I go back to those 2,500, I can select a big chunk. This, I'm moving to the stash in HumanFirst. The stash is a data holding space. Here's where if you were using reviews across Yelp, Google, you had a whole ton in your, from different segments, you could group them all here and start to run your prompt at a bigger scale. So I'm running here across 100 reviews, and it's showing me 400 results, which makes sense because each review, an average of sort of 4 items mentioned, that's starting to check out. Okay, here's the problem we're running into, which is 400 summarized results is really no more helpful than our 100 prompts or 100 reviews. So in HumanFirst, you can use the cluster function. Cluster is working on semantic similarity, which is just a fancy way to say it's starting to group similar things together. And now we can start to see trends in numbers. So, okay, 3 people of those 100 reviews mentioned that the breakfast is a little pricey. That's interesting. We've got 6 counts of a cold pool, cold jacuzzi, broken jacuzzi. That would make it cold for sure. But I see this 7 with the staff being excellent. So 7 mentions, 7 call-outs to the staff. That's looking good. We're starting to see at a more macro level what's happening in our reviews. Okay. We don't want to just look at 100 reviews. We want to look at our full 2,500 super valuable pieces of information. The way you do that in HumanFirst is you build a pipeline. The pipeline is designed to run this prompt in parallel against an unlimited amount of data. And we do it really quickly, and we do it in a nice organized way. So I'm feeding the exact same prompt into the pipeline. The input query I'm running it on is those full 2,500 reviews. Anything I've already run it on, it will skip. And I'm setting the pipeline to unlimited. So I've already actually run this pipeline. I'm just going to save it, and I'll show you the output. Here we have 8,300 extracted either pain points or highlights from our original 2,500 reviews. Again, not so helpful in volume. So what you might do with an output like this is start to download it and label it and try to get it into classes and task somebody with doing that manually. Instead, a great problem that the LLM can solve. So I've built another prompt, and here we're starting to prompt against our output. So you can see that saving this data and being able to work with it again in an LLM interface is becoming really important. I'm just asking the model, I'm saying, here's all the pain points and highlights I've got from my reviews. Please give me a list that I could properly categorize this with. So I'm asking for a taxonomy with a parent class and a child class. A parent class might be staff and a child class might be concierge or bar staff. So I'm asking it to just go one level of detail. You could build this as kind of detailed as you need it to be. When I run that as a pipeline, it's considering all those 8,000 labels, and it's giving me this really clean list of about 30 classes that I can use to properly classify these kinds of issues as they come in. Now, I don't want to apply those classes manually. I want the LLM to do so. So I've built another prompt. I've added my 30 item list, and I'm just asking it to please consider all of the 8,000 and give them the most fitting label. If it doesn't, I'm allowing it to have an out with other. And when I run that as a pipeline against the original 8,000, I'm going to see a label for each. So we've gone one layer deeper from just the stochastic review reasons down to a pretty labeled, data we can make sense of. And with HumanFirst, we can go one step further. This is kind of the data engineering piece where we can start to attach that data to the review. So with batch actions, this is a data annotation workflow. Super simple. We're just assigning the label we've been given back to the original review reason. I've added it as a metadata key called key issue, which means it's applying that to all of them really quickly. Once I get back to those key issues I've got, they now come with the summarized issue attached. So that means that I can go further in this data set for kind of whatever I'm interested in. This food and drink mold found in breakfast jar really does not sound good. So maybe I want to learn more about my breakfast quality. I'm going into that group of data, and now these are everything, everything we've seen, everything reported from the reviews that regards food and drink. If I cluster these, now I start to see the themes. So lovely breakfast with lots of extensive options. They're liking the kind of variety. That's great. But horrible scrambled eggs. Okay, we have 8 counts of an egg problem. So we might need to tighten up on our eggs and anything else that's interesting. We've got a bacon problem. Bad tasting bacon, undercooked bacon, chewy bacon. So quickly I'm able to kind of look at a subset of data, start to look at those clusters and see what's going on. Now, the teams we work with take this a lot further. They build, there's a whole labeling flow in HumanFirst. They build real classification models against which to categorize the new reviews as they come in. So you could have a really custom system of making sense of your reviews at scale. But I'll stop there for the purposes of that prompt. So reviews obviously are gold mines because we're given really concrete reasons for what we're doing well and what we're doing not so well. But most CX teams I know, and certainly as a marketer, I want to know how my customers are feeling across more subtle interactions, different touch points. So sentiment analysis is a massive metric for a lot of teams. Often we get that metric by asking our customers to fill out a survey or rate like a little in-product smiley face cue. Instead, we can just look at their actual experience and try to extrapolate how they're feeling based on their feedback, implicit feedback. So this is a prompt that's built for support calls. It could be a voice bot, chatbot, or a real human agent. You can adapt this prompt for kind of however you support your customer base. But here I'm telling it, this is again on behalf of the hotel, so the guests interacting with the staff at the hotel. I'm asking the LLM to please rate the overall tone of the customer during the conversation. And I'm asking it to score it. I'm giving very clear definitions of what 1 through 5 scores looks like. Instead of just asking it to rank on a scale, LLMs tend toward extremes. So this is going to help it pick up the nuances of like, what is really a neutral conversation? What's a 2 that's different than a 1? I'm also asking it, similar to the reviews, to pull the positive and the negative out of the customer conversations and then give a short description of the reasoning. So I have a placeholder here for the transcript. I'm going to copy and paste an actual transcript. It's going to start to look very messy. This man is querying on behalf of his wife, who cares about cleanliness, about the cleanliness habits of the hotel. He's getting some answers back. Then he's asking about noise level, and the agent's kind of fumbling here, saying that they've had a few noise complaints. They can't quite guarantee a quiet experience. A little bit disappointed, but the conversation goes on. So here, the output I'm looking for is a score for the conversation, a list of the positive events, and a list of the negative, as well as the reasoning. So again, in the kind of vertical ChatGPT interface, we can run this prompt. The output looks like I've asked. Total score 3, so they find that neutral. I think that's fair. He's just asking questions. It doesn't, some are good, some are bad. We've got both of those events pulled, and we've got the full reasoning there. So that looks good, but again, incredibly tedious, would never process that for a whole volume of transcripts. Somebody would be able to read it faster and kind of extrapolate the sentiment score. What we want to do is apply this at scale. So HumanFirst has a really great UI for these kind of conversational context. Here's 5,000 fictional interactions between the hotel and their guests. So we can delineate kind of what the customer is saying versus the agent. This helps the LLM actually make sense of the terms and understand who's talking when and where the disappointment is happening. So I can go back into my prompts. This analyze sentiment prompt is exactly the same as I had it in ChatGPT. And again, I'm going to add our conversation placeholder, which is going to tell HumanFirst to bring that conversation in the instructions given to the LLM. So I'm going to run this just on the first conversation here. So I see that it's scoring at a 3, a neutral. There's a little bit of disappointment over the lack of a cash option, but the reasoning is that they expressed disappointment, but no frustration or anger. Seems like, they just got maybe an answer they weren't hoping for. I can check that directly against the source conversation. And okay, we're asking about payment methods, PayPal, Apple Pay. Then he asks about cash upon arrival. Don't accept cash. So maybe a disappointing answer, but it resolves and, no fees to use a credit card. So I would agree. I think that's a pretty neutral conversation. Wouldn't need to flag it for really any problems or anything outstanding. So we want to run this on a pipeline across all the 5,000 conversations that we have in the platform. I've done so. Here is the output. It's showing here the scores of each, but if you click in, you've also got the positive events that it's pulled, the negative events, and the reasoning for each. And of course, you can always check that against the source conversation. So this one is a 2, and we're expressing some frustration around a service dog. And that seems right because the hotel is charging a fee, and that, as the customer says, is against the law. So definitely picking up on some frustration there. Back to the data annotation piece, we want the actual conversations to reflect these scores so that we can do further prompting and further analysis. So I'm mapping the conversation scores back to the original transcripts as a metadata field. And I don't show it here, but I did the same for the positive and the negative reasons. So you can see as you enter them, you can sort by negative events, see how that's affecting sentiment scores. You can start to get to a really multidimensional analysis. So I'm back in my conversation view, and here's all my 5s. These are great conversations. The customer was thrilled. This is really important to know because this might be how we should train our agents to answer in the future, or it might be the kind of information we should add in an FAQ article, to John's point, that doesn't suck. Otherwise, we can look at our not so great conversations. And this is where we can extract the negative events. We can understand what questions are being asked that we don't have satisfactory answers to, but also where are maybe our agents not knowing the kinds of answers we have or the kinds of protocols. In these, we might offer a discount or an upsell to try to remedy the customer's experience. We can get into some really actionable insights, knowing that these are where we're kind of underperforming. So that's an overview of sentiment analysis against conversation transcripts. I have one very final prompt that is kind of near and dear to my heart. And I'll show you, this one's going to be more about how we build a prompt and how that can iterate over time, why that's important to do with data. And then I'll be passing it back to John for Q&A. So much of the excitement around LLMs in the last few years has been about its ability to generate. As a marketer, I'm always looking at can we write more content? But also in a CX setting, everything is better when it's a two-way street. So if a customer takes time out of their day to give us feedback, leaves us a review, how many are we answering? How long is that taking us? How well are we answering them? Are we using those negatives as a chance to foster the relationship? Are we using the positives as a chance to cement some brand loyalty? So this is a prompt designed to generate specific and personalized customer outreach on the back of a review. Say it could also be on the back of a support call. This one I'm returning to our review data set and building some responses. So I'm telling it this is a review. It might be positive, negative, or neutral. And please just provide a response that seems professional and personal. I think this represents where a lot of us would start with the prompt. I've just stated my goal. I want you to respond to the customer. And when I try this on one conversation, so this is a review, and the copy I get back is pretty good because the models are pretty good. So it's highlighting specific parts that they mention in the review, the temperature. It's saying that they'll look into this to ensure it's addressed. But then it's saying things like, we also appreciate you pointing out our superb location and thank you for choosing our luxury hotel. If I was in charge, I might not ask people to mention that we're a luxury hotel. That might be more of an implicit brand statement. So that might go against my brand guidelines. So here, this is, I think, where a lot of people stop and they, think that, okay, LLMs can get me 80% of the way, but I need to really edit and clean the draft and make sure that it's working. So again, the productivity gains are kind of stifled. But in HumanFirst, you can really do this work of getting the prompt to be almost like a product to work exactly the way you would want it to do so that you can apply it at scale without those concerns. So I've duplicated the prompt and I'm adding some changes. I'm asking it to please follow the instructions below. And now I'm starting to add some instructions below. And I'm going to start with, okay, delineating. If it's a super positive review, I want you to answer a little bit differently than if it's a super negative review. So I've added a couple of best practices there to, for the negative one, begin by thanking, apologize, and ask for more details. And that might be different than a positive review. I also really care about writing. So I'm including kind of the brand personality. Maybe the hotel I'm representing is this kind of modern, fun, and welcoming vibe. And along with that, I'm including tone of voice and beyond tone of voice guidelines, true guidelines, like say these words and definitely don't say these words, stiff, outdated phrases. Don't sign off from the review with any kind of attribution like thank you from so-and-so. These are things where, the mirage between the LLM and the people really break and it can become clear what's automated. So adding these kind of layered instructions really important to getting an output you're actually going to use to speed up any of your flows. When I try that prompt again on the exact same review, I'm seeing much better. Can't wait to welcome you back for another fantastic stay is a much better way to end that sign off. It's highlighting the right things. Sorry to hear about the issue with the temperature. We'll address this promptly. I think that's the right tone of voice. This kind of iteration can go on for half an hour, and it really should, because getting it right at the beginning allows this to be performant and to actually write your FAQs or actually write your customer outreach. So when
Lauren,
I go back,
can I ask you a question there? As someone who writes a lot of content themselves, if you weren't writing with an LLM or getting the LLM to build a prompt, how long do you think it would take you to write a response to a review like that?
and not only how long, but how kind of tedious. I know for me, like the 10th one I write is going to be just a little less genuine than the first one I write because I've been doing it 10 times. So yeah, it takes hours. And even I would say these brand guidelines as someone I've worked with a lot of, great teams of writers and even standardizing your guidelines for how you speak as a company, as a brand across different people who are humans is really challenging. So yeah, encoding this knowledge and saving that time, as you mentioned, is huge. It's you can sort of see my excitement. It's one of the areas that I think is most interesting about doing this work in HumanFirst.
You mentioned a really interesting thing there, like encoding the knowledge of your brand guidelines so that other people can follow it is really important and really hard. And ultimately, that's what we're doing here with a prompt, is we're encoding our brand knowledge, our brand guidelines into the LLM. The LLM is behaving much like a new employee or somebody who's never done this job before might behave. They're going to follow the instructions that they're given. I think that's a really interesting insight.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'd say like even for yourself, we all have those, funky brand guideline messaging things, but when you actually have to tell the LLM like how you want to sound, how you want to represent yourself to your customers, it adds that layer of, yeah, thought around, like, it's just a product review response, but how do we do our product review responses? Like, how do we as a company believe those should go? So it's a really, really cool intersection of kind of the human expertise meeting um, this medium in which, yeah, we're encoding that knowledge and thinking through those kinds of problems. To cap off, because we had so many problems with the food and the breakfast, maybe that's where we want to start with our reviews. So I've got my 200 plus complaints. I'm just taking 100 of them. I'm running that response prompt across the 100. Quickly, it's given me that, well-written, happy exploring is a great sign off. That sounds like a brand and not an LLM. So it's, thanking them for their wonderful feedback on that breakfast. Maybe those guys liked it. And this one, truly sorry to hear about your experience with the scones. So there's a bit of a scone problem, but we've acknowledged it and we're going to move forward. So again, there's many ways to use this data. You could download and you have your 100 plus responses already prepped to deploy, but also, a perfectly tuned prompt like this could be added to an automation system, a Zapier or a Make, and work on a trigger. I know a lot of those connect with things like Shopify. So upon a new product review, you could run this prompt automatically and kind of have the output that you can either automatically deploy or you can double check yourself and give back to the customers. Beautiful. That concludes our demo. Like I said, that was a deep dive into 3, but there's 3 others where that came from. And at the end of the session, we're going to share a take-home guide so you guys can have all 6.
Lauren, I just want to touch on one thing. I know we've been having some gentle chuckles about the quality of the eggs and bacon and scones at our hotel here. But I actually think that this is really where the real story lies. So yes, with a really well-crafted prompt applied to your data, you can uncover that eggs and bacon are customer issues, and maybe we can resolve the customer issue by fixing our eggs and our bacon. But if you're a hotel who's offering a continental breakfast and you have a clientele who's in search of a hotel that has a good quality continental breakfast, by fixing what might feel like a trivial issue, you're actually having a major impact on possible revenue, bookings, reviews. All of these things lead to better quality experiences, which we all know lead to higher revenues and customer loyalty over the long run. And so while we're making like some jokes, I think this is really important to consider when we reflect on our own business, is that, these insights that may at first glance feel like they are a bit laughable are the things that can actually lead to significant changes in business performance. So I just wanted to highlight that because sometimes the leap from, okay, this customer's grumpy about whatever, to, okay, now I've actually transformed how my business operates, which is going to lead to revenue, sometimes isn't always immediately obvious. And, that's something like we try to work with our customers a lot on in our engagements and some of the advice that we can provide. But I think that that's where a lot of the value actually winds up being unlocked. It becomes more tangible, right? Like I think a lot of people are trying to look for tangible ways that I can say that generative AI has brought value to my business. And I think this is a good example of it.
I would add too, John, I think you're right on, and that's where the excitement around this more qualitative data analytics is really present because you can see through the numbers. Maybe you can see that your bookings are down by like 10%, but the qualitative data gives you those insights, and the answer might truly just be like cook the bacon a little longer and the numbers are going to rebound. Like it can be those simple fixes, I think, from the qualitative customer experience help us avoid those over-engineering problems where we're, trying to solve a big numbers problem without the customer's ground truth driving the transformation. So I think that's a totally right call.
Yeah, like the answer is not always like go build a robust chatbot, right? Like it could be something much more elegant, like cook your bacon longer. I love that,
Sure.
Megan. Or Lauren. Okay, so do these a couple of questions that come up? Do these work on any LLM? Do these prompts work on any LLM? Are there ones that are better than the rest?
Yeah, that's a really good call out. We design most of these prompts on GPT-4, the latest release. I would definitely recommend, I know some model providers actually have even different instructions for how to build a performant prompt based on their models. So I think that Vertex and OpenAI both follow the sort of recipe we have. And Anthropic and others might actually suggest that you put the instruction last and the context first. So there's some switching to do as you play with other models. It's also always useful to try different models to see what's best performant for the task at hand. Sometimes you can save time and money by using different models across. So definitely wherever you're using these prompts, account for that in your engineering. And in HumanFirst, you can do that model switching right in the platform. You can choose, we have tons of integrations and you can choose any model to run the prompt on. So you can see how those results differ as well.
Yeah, I'll just say like that's a huge value add in the HumanFirst platform is that, you've built your prompt, you have your data, you can switch your LLM out and all of that other work that you've done, you've curated your data set to the data set you want to do the review or the prompt against. You've got the prompt written, you can now just run it. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel every time you want to test on a different LLM. Okay, another question that's come up is, are there any other settings I should consider, things like temperature?
Yeah, temperature is a big one. Temperature sort of tells the model how closely to follow your instructions or how much to sort of improvise and do the LLM magic. So our team of CS and professional services, along with these prompts, kind of makes those calls and looks at the different temperature settings. Again, like prompt by prompt, even as you're prompt chaining, we showed here like running some prompts on the output of another prompt. All those things can vary in the settings. But I would say in getting started, definitely run the prompts on any model. You don't have to be so technical. John and I only touch the temperature when we must. But certainly when you're running at scale data transformations or you're doing this kind of heavy analytics work, there's a lot of model controls we can introduce. HumanFirst has a pane in the prompt panel where you can play with those settings and start to understand how it's impacting your output.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I think that's everything in terms of questions. Really enjoyed the conversation, Lauren. To wrap up, we've got a prompt guide that's available. Anyone who's attended the webinar live today will follow up, provide you that prompt guide that you can go and take into your work. Otherwise, you can, download that from us if you missed the webinar. I think we just posted a link to it here in the chat, so you can go check it out there. And anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more about how we can help you analyze your customer conversations, customer interactions, reviews, etc. You want to learn more about how maybe you could apply large language models and prompts to your data, please give us a shout. We're more than happy to jump on a call and share some information on some of our expertise. There's a link here in the chat to book a consultation directly. So thanks everybody for your time today. Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Stay tuned.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Cheers.
Laura.